in a faraway place and time, before any man can remember, the forces of the universe began to unite. Together they formed towering pinnacles that are still slowly being molded by the forces of nature and being painted by the sun's light into hues of red and gold. Mountain tops are still carefully being carved by the winds and waters into sculptures of timeless beauty, creating a canvas of panoramic wonders of nature that stand today as heaven's own masterpiece. It is a land hidden from the rest of the world. It is a secret land of wonder called Sedona. Located less than 2 hours north of metropolitan Phoenix, Arizona, and just 2 hours south of the famous Grand Canyon, Sedona stands about 4,300 feet tall above sea level and provides perhaps one of the most spectacular vistas on Earth. Sedona's canyon walls seem to whisper of a different life, a life far more grand. It is a land full of wonder and enchanting beauty, enticing all who view her, beckoning them to behold her blazing pinnacles. This remarkable natural gallery of panoramic landscapes and carefully carved rock formations has been created over millions and millions of years. Many of these sculpted rocks take on identifiable forms, some amusing and many beautiful. Local residents have given many of these rocks affectionate nicknames like Bell Rock, Coffee Pot Rock, and the all-time favorite, Snoopy, who's sleeping on top of his doghouse. Some even find Woodstock, or is it Lucy nearby? Another famous rock is Steamboat Rock. said to have inspired Walt Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's fun to use your own imagination to see different things. But most of all, you'll see visions of beauty. Sandstone pillars that become sentinels, eternal monuments to the sky. As the sunlight dances through the clouds, the rocks and canyons beneath reflect magnificent colors and express different moods, many that are simply awe-inspiring. Then suddenly, near sunset, it seems as if the dust and evening winds conspire to rapidly transform the sky into a valley of enchantment. Striking spires become flames in the sunset, setting the rocks aglow with an indescribable incandescence that offers a mesmerizing moment to all who behold it. Each light has its own special moment, as elusive and fleeting as a shadow. Yet each separate moment becomes a powerful vision, exuding its own glory that will never be exactly the same again. Then mountaintops suddenly turn into seas of blue, lapping the silent shores of an eternal sea into the night.
The most dramatic time to view Sedona's changing moods and spectacular sunsets is during the rainbow season. This season is also called the monsoons by local residents. Sedona's so-called monsoons are actually short-lived afternoon rain showers that have greatly influenced life in Arizona for thousands of years. They usually begin with a proverbial bang around the 4th of July and end late in August. Dry winds from the west yield to winds that have picked up moisture from the Gulfs of California and Mexico. These winds combine to form the Bermuda High. The Bermuda High then wanders north toward the Rocky Mountains. As it passes through Arizona, lively thunderstorms flash through the skies with heavy raindrops typical of tropical typhoons. But they quickly dissipate, ending in a peaceful array of arcing rainbows. The puddles left by these summer cloudbursts become the breeding ground for the various forms of reptile life, like the horned lizard, better known as the horny toad. The horny toad is many times mistaken for a toad because of its flat shape, but the horny toad is actually a lizard and not a toad. This little creature is covered with sharp spines that protect it from predators while he basks in the desert sun. In the evening, the horny toad's skin color changes from light to dark brown as he soaks up sunlight, which also acts as a camouflage from other predators. Horny toads are actually a part of the iguana family. The Sedona lizard community is comprised of many other harmless lizards. They scoot in and out of rocks as they show off their acrobatic prowess, such as walking up walls or doing push-ups. The lizard push-up is a little more than amphibian aerobics. It's a way of claiming their territory and also their way of saying it's too darn hot on their bellies. When the summer weather gets too much to bear, they scatter for solace in the shade, like their neighbor, the tarantula, who attempts to follow suit but usually waits to come out at night when it's cooler. The tarantula, not toxic to man as many may think, are the largest of American spiders, also called the bird spider. Tarantulas do not fly, but their long, hairy legs and bodies enable them to pounce upon large beetles, which are their primary source of food. In medieval times, the tarantula was believed to have a bite that would inflict a dance mania upon its victim, who was then compelled to dance until the poison wore off. In reality, the tarantula is not dangerous and does not aggressively attack humans, unless pestered. The tarantula is nocturnal, hiding by day in rocks and crevices. However, in the fall, you might spot a tarantula crossing the highway. Don't fear, he's probably just in search of a mate.
A favorite way for people to cool off is a drive up Oak Creek Canyon, about 5 miles north of Sedona, to Slide Rock State Park, where a natural slick water chute awaits them. Slide Rock's crystal clear waters are brimming with fun from top to bottom. And speaking of bottoms, don't forget to protect yours and wear jeans if you glide down Mother Nature's water slide. It's easy to see why Slide Rock is one of Arizona's favorite state parks. As you continue to drive up Oak Creek Canyon, you'll enjoy 16 miles of lush forest lined with massive red rocks that provide an unforgettable journey. Once on top, the emerald-colored pine forest decorates the switchbacks and exposes the western and eastern rims. The view, about 6,400 feet above sea level, is breathtaking. Faulting helped the canyon waters break through the impermeable lava cap on top of the plateau. Once they permeated the lava cap, these powerful cascades pounded this tough rock layer until it was cracked. Then the water continued to carve this magnificent canyon of crimson through the softer, sedimentary layers of rocks. The beautiful, meandering Oak Creek still etches its way through Sedona. The crystal clear spring waters almost seem to dance through the rocks. The continual faulting and fracturing have allowed natural springs to feed the canyon creeks today. The Sterling Spring, located about 1/4 mile up the canyon rim, is the principal feeding spring. The Oak Creek has become a dependable water supply, which has attracted various wildlife to this area, like the mountain lion, also called the panther or cougar. The mountain lion is actually quite timid and shows an abnormal fear of man, his only enemy, even though he can weigh up to 200 pounds and leap 20 feet on a single bound. On the other hand, he is an accomplished hunter and is rarely seen by humans since his territory is always in rugged, steep mountain terrain. The mountain lion is usually active in the evening hours, when he utilizes his exceptional night vision. The mountain lion hides high in a tree, then pounces down on his unsuspecting prey. He uses his sharp, curved claws to subdue his prey, and then he comes in for the kill, a bite on the neck. His victim, usually the deer, doesn't stand a chance against this surprise attack. There are two types of deer that inhabit the Sedona area. One is the white-tailed deer, who can run at speeds of up to 40 miles an hour. The white-tailed deer roam the lower canyon near the Slide Rock area. The white-tailed deer are a friendly, social creature compared to the mule deer or muleys that can be spotted at higher elevations. Famous for their very large 9-inch ears, the mule deer are extremely agile and are known for their ability to leap all at once and still land gracefully on all 4 feet. An oddity, it may seem, is the presence of the wild pig or peccary, better known to Sedona gardeners as the javelina. They love to munch on prickly pear as well as trample through blossoming gardens. They do not overtly seek to harm humans. However, due to their poor eyesight, the javelina may mistakenly feel cornered. So it's a good idea to give them lots of space. A famous admirer of Sedona's wildlife and rugged Oak Creek Canyon was author and producer Zane Grey. He was an avid hunter and explorer of the untamed Oak Creek Canyon and West Fork, where he maintained his own hunting cabin. Also known as the father of the Western novel, Zane Grey had the rare talent to accurately portray the romance of pioneer America. He became an explorer, hunter, and fisherman himself in order to better emulate the characters he created. In his book, Call of the Canyon, Zane Grey captured the essence of Oak Creek Canyon when he wrote, "Oak Creek fell to a transparent, beautiful brook, leisurely eddying in the stone-walled nooks, hurrying with murmur and babble over the little falls. The red walls seemed to dream and wait under the blaze of the sun. Only the murmuring of the creek broke the silence of little rills and the musical dash of little rapids." Zane Grey was responsible for bringing the motion picture industry to the Sedona area. It was Zane Grey's love of Oak Creek Canyon that prompted him to convince producer Jesse Lasky to produce the famous silent movie Call of the Canyon, based on his novel, at its actual setting, Oak Creek Canyon. The film was shot in 1923 near the famous Mayhew Lodge, which later became a refuge for dignitaries such as Lord Halifax, President Herbert Hoover, and movie stars of the 1930s and 40s like Jimmy Stewart, Maureen O'Hara, Clark Gable, and Cesar Romero. Unfortunately, the lodge burned down in 1980. After the success of Call of the Canyon, movie producers and film crews flocked to Sedona's Red Rock country. Since 1959, at least 2 movies are filmed here each year. You can probably recognize the background settings to many of your favorite old westerns and movies as you drive through Sedona. Street signs with names from major studios like Columbia, Paramount, Universal, and movies like Broken Arrow, Johnny Guitar, and Gun Fury reflect the presence of Hollywood. Even Elvis Presley filmed a movie here called Stay Away Joe, shot on Bob Bradshaw's ranch. Since then, hundreds of motion pictures have been filmed here. Today, it's not unusual to see Hollywood crews shooting movies, TV commercials, music videos, and TV programs, all using Sedona's natural beauty as their backdrop.
Sedona's natural beauty has been years in the making. Sedona's beauty secret is a secret millions and millions of years old, basically attributed to natural sculpting by seas, sands, and winds over time. The results are the bewitching phenomenon we witness today. These ancient rock formations are our windows into the past. From oceans to deserts to volcanic eruptions, Sedona's geological events have been quite active. To understand the geological history of the area, imagine the surface of the land to be a gigantic layer cake about 5,000 feet above sea level and about 150,000 square miles, called the Colorado Plateau. If we were to cut a slice of this layer cake, we could see 10 layers of sedimentary rocks. Around 165 million years ago, during the Mesozoic age, dinosaurs freely roamed the Sedona area, which then had a more tropical climate. Although most dinosaur bones buried in sediments have been eroded away from Sedona, experts feel it is certain that dinosaurs were present here. Dinosaurs, which literally means terrible lizards, walked along the shores of Sedona's ancient tropical beaches and stalked their prey. The dinosaurs disappeared suddenly, causing scientists to theorize that perhaps a huge meteor blasted the Earth. This meteor could have created massive global dust, which would have altered the entire world's climate and blocked the sun's light for 3 or even 4 years. Plant life slowly diminished, and subsequently, so did the plant-eating dinosaurs and mammals. Eventually, they had no food source, and it became uninhabitable for them. Man's fascination with the dinosaur and their mysterious disappearance is still alive today. The age of the dinosaur is a popular subject of many movies, comic strips, and children's books. Perhaps it is challenging to man to imagine a time when a more dominant species other than himself ruled Earth. The gorgeous Oak Creek Canyon was created with the development of faults, which resulted from millions of years of compression of the Earth's crust when great land masses collided. The Oak Creek Fault is 30 miles long and runs north to the San Francisco Peaks from Sedona. About 10 million years ago, the Oak Creek Canyon was carved along this fault. Later, between 8 and 6 million years ago, about 5 lava flows permeated the ancestral Oak Creek Canyon and painted black basalt streaks throughout the rocks. On our geological time clock, about 3 million years ago, an even larger lava flow dammed up the Verde River and formed Lake Verde. Later, the Verde Lake began to evaporate, and the lava dam eroded away, leaving behind the distinct white hills of the Verde Valley that surround Sedona and Oak Creek. Constant pressure and faulting continued to construct the canyon until 1 million years ago. Then the final phase of the canyon occurred when the Oak Creek Fault pushed up the western block. This allowed the pounding waters of the Oak Creek to etch the canyon as we see it today. The results are the impressive Oak Creek Canyon, which is a vision not to be missed. As you travel throughout Sedona, you will be able to view the canyon and the various rock layers in our geological cake. Naturally, most of these views are spectacular, like the ride up Schnebly Hill Road.
Schnebly Hill Road Vista is well worth a trip up the scenic, dusty, yet historic dirt road off Highway 179. You'll want to stop several times on the way uphill to enjoy the views, wildlife, and meandering creek. Once on top, the scene is one of Sedona's finest, absolutely breathtaking, and ever-changing with the time of day. Another historic vista is at Midgley Bridge. Built in 1939 by Major William W. Midgley, the Midgley Bridge was the final link for today's travelers up Oak Creek Canyon. Today, it offers fantastic photographic and scenic views. A steep hike down the hill at Midgley Bridge will bring you into Wilson Canyon, bordered by Wilson Mountain. Both were named after hunter and trapper Richard Wilson, who in June of 1885 became hunted himself by a grizzly bear he was tracking. Wilson had apparently wounded the straggling grizzly, who began his revenge by chasing Wilson through the canyon. Neither survived the ordeal. Today, the grizzly bear is almost extinct in the Sedona area. However, sightings of this shy black bear do still occur. These creatures have never been reported to aggressively attack humans, but it's best to steer clear if perchance you meet one while on a hike. A very popular point of interest is the Chapel of the Holy Cross, built near the imagined rock formations of the Madonna and Praying Nuns. These eternal rock formations inspired Marguerite Stout in 1956 to build her architectural masterpiece in Sedona. This ended her worldwide search for a location of a chapel that could be host to the spirituality of all mankind. A chapel that would be open to everyone regardless of creed. Today, this is the site of the Chapel of the Holy Cross, which stands impressively in the natural sandstone peaks. It is an inspiration to visitors from around the world. The chapel can be found just east of Sedona off Highway 179 on Chapel Road. An inspiring scenic site is the naturally sculpted Cathedral Rock, whose scarlet spires are delicately reflected in a pool below called Red Rock Crossing. Old-timers refer to this location as Courthouse Rock, but today's residents and visitors alike call it Cathedral Rock. This site has understandably been the backdrop for many motion pictures and westerns, including Broken Arrow. Today, it's a perfect place for a picnic and a swim, or just an opportunity to enjoy one of nature's finest visions in the world. It's easy to see why this is one of Sedona's most photographed locations. Another scenic site that shouldn't be missed is the sweeping red rock landscape of Boynton Canyon. Its splendor seems to embrace you as you drive down Dry Creek Road into Boynton Canyon. A sense of something grand is evoked from this majestic scenery. A feeling fueled by the panorama of overpowering red rocks that seem to shelter a special enchantment. The ancient Indians of the area strongly believed this is the center of the universe. These ancient Indians were called the Wipukpaya Indians, meaning people at the foot of the Red Rock Mountains. They believed that one person, Kamalapukwiya, survived a flood that destroyed the whole world. She became the mother of Lofty Wanderer, who gathered all the creatures of the world together and taught them their ways. Then Lofty Wanderer directed them to go to the four corners of the world and depart from this center of creation, Boynton Canyon, for it was a sacred place meant only for the gods or sacred people. Indian storytellers continue this myth and believe that the spirits of their ancestors still dwell in this canyon.
The first Native Americans roamed the Sedona area about 37,000 years ago. At that time, nearly 1/6 of the world's surface was covered with gigantic glaciers. These frozen glaciers caused the sea levels to be lowered, in some places as much as 300 feet. One of the results was that it created a temporary land bridge that connected northwestern Alaska and Siberia. It is thought that grazing animals crossed this newly formed bridge and were followed by the early nomadic hunters of the Ice Age. Thus, the migration of the first humans to inhabit the Southwest began. We know that they wore animal furs, cooked over fires, and hunted with tools of flint and bones. Eventually, these nomadic cavemen disappeared in the New World and were replaced by Asian tribes. This new race of Paleo-Indian hunters were called elephant hunters because they hunted large Ice Age mammals like the mastodons, mammoths, and elephants. It is known that these ancient hunters have migrated down into the Verde Valley and roamed Red Rock country since 11,000 BC. These nomadic elephant hunters experienced a more tropical Sedona that also supported wild ancient camels and huge bison. However, as the climate became drier, the lush vegetation was depleted and the giant mammals disappeared from the area. As the climate continued to change, a different culture of people developed called the Archaics. They relied on hunting smaller animals and food gathering. Their stone tools or arrowheads have been found in the Sedona area dating back 4,000 years. The culture of the Archaics evolved into one of farming and pottery making, creating a tribe called the Hakataya. About this same time, the Hohokam tribe migrated into the Sedona region from the south and merged with the Hakataya tribe. The Hohokam introduced the cultivation of crops utilizing irrigation canals. Irrigation farming enabled the Hohokam to settle in villages and to develop superior arts and craft skills. As master potters and craftsmen, the Hohokam were at least 300 years ahead of their European counterparts. They built one-room huts, partially underground, called pit houses. They even constructed elaborate ball courts like the one still standing at Wapaki, just north of Sedona. The word Hohokam is a Pima Indian word meaning those who have vanished, which they did mysteriously. Another tribe of Indians called the Sinagua, meaning without water, were living north of the Hohokam near Flagstaff. These early Sinagua were dry farmers and relied solely on rainfalls for their crops. They were not as sophisticated as the Hohokam, and the typical Sinagua pottery was plain brown or brick red. Around 1025 AD, the Sinagua Indians migrated to Sedona from the north and merged with the Hakatayas and Hohokams. The Hohokam and early southern Sinagua Indians tilled the soil and planted crops of corn, beans, and squash. Another staple in their diet was the agave plant, which is also called the century plant because it was once thought it took 100 years for its flowering stalk to shoot up. Actually, it blooms in about 25 years. When the plant is about to die, it'll shoot a stalk right out of the middle that looks like a giant asparagus spear and will grow at the amazing rate of 8 to 12 inches per day. The ancient Sinagua Indians roasted the heart of this plant in a pit for several days, then ate it, much like we do the artichoke. They also used the spine of the agave reed as a needle and its fibers as thread, like a self-contained sewing kit. They also carved the big spikes into spoons, or sometimes made whisk brooms out of them. Their sandals, made from the agave leaves, are so durable that archaeologists are digging up ancient sandals that are still intact, even though they were made over 1,000 years ago. Suddenly, the tranquil and productive lifestyle of the Sinagua came to an abrupt halt. Around 1064 AD, a volcano erupted violently, scattering volcanic ash over 800 square miles. This ominous dark cloud frightened these gentle people, and they fled from their peaceful homeland. The Sunset Crater, a huge cinder cone 400 feet deep, was formed as a result of this eruption. But so was a more fertile soil. This soil attracted neighboring tribes like the Anasazi. The two tribes merged and exchanged ideas. The Anasazi taught the Sinagua how to build their architectural masterpieces, multi-room pueblos. These dwellings were constructed with low entranceways, so an intruder would have to bend over to enter. The family would then be able to club the intruder over the head and capture him. Today, you can still see these ancient cliff-dwelling ruins like Montezuma's Castle near Sedona. It's an excellent reminder of the superior level of civilization that these ancient people achieved. Their masterfully constructed dwellings were built facing the south so that they would get the low angle of winter sun that kept them warm, but also avoided the direct, scorching hot sun in the summer. The builders of Montezuma's castle were so skilled, they even curved their 12-inch thick walls to fit the shape of the cave. Montezuma's castle was home to about 50 people. Another dwelling near Sedona is Tuzigut, which is an Apache name meaning crooked water, perhaps referring to nearby Peck's Lake. Tuzigut was constructed high on a hill with 2 stories and 97 rooms. The roofs were made of pine and sycamore beams, covered by willow branches and sealed with mud. A ladder through the hatchway in the roof provided entry instead of a doorway. By the mid-1400s, these civilized Pueblo people suddenly disappeared. No one knows why. There are only a few clues left by these intelligent people, like their ancient petroglyphs and pictographs on nearby cave walls. Why did they leave so suddenly, without a trace, leaving behind their corn cobs still roasting in their fires? The answer to this mystery is known only to the 1,000-year-old walls of these primitive dwellings. Perhaps the answer is in their crude etchings on the rocks. Are they messages in stone that could unlock their secrets and dreams? We can only imagine what it was like to walk in the steps of the Anasazi, which is a name given to them by the Navajo meaning ancient ones. We do know that they walked Sedona's land over 1,000 years ago in yucca-made sandals. They were short, gentle people who left their footprints in stones and their stories and carvings on the rock walls. When they etched their rock art out from the dark desert varnish, it is called petroglyphs. On the other hand, pictographs are painted pictures using color pigments from the clays, minerals, and natural plant dyes. Evidence suggests that the meaning of their rock art is mainly religious, since everyday life seemed to revolve around the spirit world. These ancient Indians were very superstitious and mystical. They believed that animals, as well as natural phenomenon, were spirits of mythical gods and capable of great magic that could control their destinies. They believed that following the movements of celestial bodies was the way to follow the movements of their gods, the moon, sun, and stars. They recorded the movements of their gods of the sky with a crude solar calendar which they etched in the rock walls in such a way so the sun's rays would light up a particular section of the glyph, indicating the various solstices and seasons. For example, when both sides would light up, it meant it was the beginning of winter and the animals they hunted were going to migrate south. This solar glyph also told them when to plant their corn, when the sun god would shine on the seedlings, and when the god of rain would water their plants. These concentric circles, or solar calendars, could only be interpreted by the shamans or high priests of their tribe. The shamans are depicted in rock art, usually with triangular bodies and horned headdresses or masked faces to distinguish them as the spirit guides. Often, supposed visions of the shamans were recorded next to their image. The concentric circle calendar was also a symbol of the shaman's gateway to the spirit world, where they received their universal knowledge, such as how to interpret the solar calendar glyph. Today, glyph interpretations vary, but many common opinions have been formed. For instance, the mountain lion portrayed in this rock art could mean that a warrior killed the lion at that location, or it could be the name of the clan of that area, or a certain spirit that ruled that particular canyon. These pictographs represent some type of combat, whether it's marking the location of a battle waged between tribes or between their supernatural gods is unknown. A somewhat humorous glyph is the hunchbacked, flute-playing Kokopelli. Kokopelli is a colorful character who is found in many ancient sites. He is very definitely male and the personification of their fertility rites. Kokopelli is the deity of potency and perhaps the most popular glyph of the Anasazi. Handprints like these symbolize that the owner of the prints was praying to the gods for either a prosperous hunting season or relief from fear of evil, depending on nearby glyphs. The handprints were also placed there to assure that the god would know by whom the prayer was being made. Ancient Sedona artists also displayed their creativity in their distinct white and black pottery. Their jewelry, made from juniper berry seeds, was considered valuable and traded for cotton, seashells, and beads from the Far East. The Anasazi were extremely resourceful and even made chewing gum from the pinyon tree. These ancient ones slept under carefully handmade blankets of yucca and turkey feathers, blankets they would also be buried in, along with their dreams. The tribes eventually merged and today are referred to as the Yavapai Apache.
It was a quest for gold and silver and two missing Franciscan priests that brought the white man to Sedona around 1583. Antonio de Espejo was the first white man to travel to Red Rock country after discovering that the priests had been killed. Espejo, 4 Spaniards, and several Hopi guides followed the Palatquapi Trail, which means the Trail of the Red Rocks. They followed the trail in search of gold and turquoise. The Palatquapi Trail descended from the Hopi Mesas to the Verde Valley by route of Chavez Pass. Perhaps Espejo didn't find silver or gold here in the way he thought he would, but the scenic countryside was certainly a precious commodity to behold. Pioneers, prospectors, surveyors, and trappers began to arrive in the early 1800s. Their peaceful coexistence with the Yavapai and Apache Indian tribes was short-lived because they began taking over the Indians' hunting grounds. The Indians reacted by raiding the white man's crops. Tensions and Indian raids accelerated. The Army sent troops who established Camp Lincoln, named after the President Lincoln, but was soon changed to Camp Verde. Then malaria overtook many of the men, killing more soldiers than the Indian raids did. A tough General George Crook was called in to settle the problem. He finally contained the Indians in 1871 and convinced them to grow surplus crops on a reservation. However, the farm machinery he promised to the Indians never arrived, and politicians and ruthless ranchers succeeded in having the reservation abolished. In 1875, the Indians were ordered to immediately move to the San Carlos Reservation despite the harsh cold of March. In the March of Tears, hundreds of Indians died in this merciless winter march. White settlers began to enter the Sedona area in the 1870s. John Jim Thompson discovered Sedona while hunting with a friend named B.F. Koppel. Thompson saw the beautiful, untamed canyon and decided he would farm squash, beans, and corn at an abandoned Indian garden. In 1876, Thompson took squatters' rights to land located across the road from the present-day Indian Garden store and built his cabin in the lush Oak Creek Canyon. Thompson became the first permanent white settler to the area. Little did Thompson know that his move sparked the beginning of a civilized world-class destination. About the same time, travel to the area was growing and was made easier by establishing the Beaver Head Stage Station. This stagecoach stop was 12 miles south of Sedona. It was also at this time that many of Sedona's red rocks were assigned their names by government surveyors. It is still argued by old-timers that the formation we call Cathedral Rock today was actually Courthouse Rock, but was incorrectly transcribed by a government surveyor. About 1880, a rugged escaped convict from California named C.J. Bear Howard arrived in Oak Creek Canyon. Bear Howard was said to be as grisly as the bears he hunted. He sold the bear meat in Flagstaff until well in his 90s. The energetic Bear Howard also built a cabin near the mouth of the West Fork, where he settled with some of his own pet bears. His notorious cabin was ironically renovated into the famous Mayhew Lodge. In fact, Zane Grey's cabin, where he wrote Call of the Canyon, was just around the bend from the Mayhew Lodge. Unfortunately, the Mayhew Lodge burned down in the 1980s, and only fragments remain on the trail to West Fork. In 1901, a Pennsylvania Dutch couple, Carl and Sedona Schneble, moved to Sedona. They purchased 80 acres of land where the present-day Los Abrigados Resort is located, and built a large home which coincidentally became the first hotel. Hoping to get a post office established, Carl Schneble submitted the name Schneble Station. It was rejected because it was too long. Carl's brother Ellsworth suggested they use Sedona's name. The post office accepted her name, and in 1902, the town of Sedona was born. Carl Schnebly and his brother Ellsworth were also instrumental in completing the first road between Flagstaff and Sedona by building the Schnebly Hill Road. This opened the beginning of a flourishing trade market between the two towns. The main products were lumber and fruit. The majority of trading featured the exceptional peach and apple orchards grown by the Jordan family. One such orchard is still blooming near Jordan Road, the other alongside Art Barn Road. This old Jordan apple packing barn became an historic landmark when it was purchased by the newly formed Art Center on April 28, 1961. This fulfilled the dream of the Egyptian-born Nassan Gobran. Gobran fell in love with Sedona the moment he laid eyes on Red Rock country and dreamt of the city becoming a center for the arts, an artist's haven. Gobran met internationally famed surrealist Max Ernst in Sedona and was commissioned by him to cast the notorious sculpture Capricorn. Due to the unfaltering efforts of the late Nassan Gobran, Sedona has become widely recognized as a center for the arts in the West. Sedona also became the birthplace of the cowboy artists of America. Sedona resident Joe Beeler, Charlie Dye, John Hampton, and Robert McLeod founded this group on June 23, 1965. Today, it is one of the most prestigious associations in the history of American art and continues to authentically perpetuate the memory and culture of the Old West. Today, there are over 47 art galleries in Sedona, where world-renowned as well as very talented local artists exhibit their works. More than 400 artists reside in Sedona, along with an unknown number of authors, movie stars, and others of the creative spirit who are naturally attracted to Sedona's aesthetic surroundings. The heart of high desert wilderness also lures many visitors to the scenic wonderland and invites them to explore the backcountry. Hiking is a favorite way to discover Sedona. Even local residents take advantage of the many hiking trails that are abundant in the area. All that is sought after in Arizona can be found in Sedona's diverse hiking trails. Hard to get to, secret canyons can be reached by horseback. The exhilaration of seeing the unspoiled beauty of the wilderness is still alive as you blaze the trails of the pioneers from yesteryear. Most of Red Rock Country is still a part of the untamed West. Real-life cowboys still amble down the streets of Sedona in their rawhide gear. Their jeans, shirts, boots, spurs, and hats are an international symbol of both the myth and reality surrounding the last of these Western frontier heroes, the American cowboy. And it just seems natural that where there are cowboys, there are Indians. The nearby Navajo, Hopi, and Yavapai tribes still bring their handcrafted jewelry and other works from the reservations to trade with the white man in the city. A land rich in scenery, culture, history, and old Western heritage. Sedona is fast becoming Arizona's most popular attraction next to the Grand Canyon. Both Sedona and the Grand Canyon share the same geological history, but unlike the Grand Canyon, Sedona is an accessible fantasy land and has a much milder climate. Sedona has 4 distinct yet moderate seasons. Because of the central location and mid-level elevation, Sedona is spared the extreme temperature of Phoenix and Flagstaff. The average summer temperature is 15 degrees cooler than Phoenix and averages 20 degrees warmer than Flagstaff in the winter. The sun shines more than 300 days per year. At first glance, this semi-arid desert may appear to be barren, a wasteland of sorts. But on a closer look, not only are the desert plants useful to man's survival, but the true beauty of the desert unfolds. The wide open spaces create a sense of freedom to the individual, a greatness never before experienced. The land and the desert touch the turquoise skies with such brilliance and strength. It's bound to touch the innermost depth of the human soul. Even the humble knotted juniper is a timeless masterpiece with a sovereignty all of its own. The fall slowly arrives with the soothing sounds of quaking aspens in the wind. The sycamore trees dress up with splashes of yellow, complementing the hardy green Douglas firs. Together with the vibrant maples, they create a carpet of autumn beauty on the canyon floor below. Winter winds coolly sweep the leaves away, leaving an echo of their beauty against sun-setting skies. The daytimes are usually sunny and mild. It rarely snows, and when it does, it's a masterpiece to behold. The landscape is blanketed into a winter wonderland. The snow-covered scenery silently takes on an aura of magic, and the already picturesque Red Rock country becomes simply enchanting. The sun quickly melts the lacy ice designs, turning them into a glistening sugar-coated glaze as the weather warms the rocks. The sweet spring rains arrive, turning this storybook land into a gigantic bouquet of desert blossoms. Almost overnight, wildflowers burst with color and beauty. Season after season, continue to sketch the beautiful portrait of an unforgettable land. Scarlet towers still proudly whisper of something grand. Each moment projects a different light, reflecting Sedona's special design. With each sunrise and sunset, you are awakened with a renewed reverence for nature and are left in awe. Each light unveils a new vision, orchestrated with the symphony of nearby murmuring brooks, perfectly scented with the perfume of pristine pines. This experience takes you into a serene timelessness, into a solitude filled with a sense of wonder at such an inexhaustible treasure of nature, perhaps unmatched on this earth. A treasure of beauty we call the Beauty of Sedona.